On today's show, we talk about how Houston can change all of the narratives behind their in-season struggles on the offensive side of the ball and defensively an update on Will Anderson Jr.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. I'm your credential media member and Texans football analyst, John, some sports guy Hickman, alongside Texans credential media member and the man with the big hat and the even bigger smile, Brian Big Stars Bearfield. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day, and thank you for being in every day of the show. You guys are part of the Locked On Texans and the Locked On Podcast Network's family, your team every day. Today we're talking about changing the narratives, right? You know, trade deadline is coming up today. We'll see if the Houston Texans make any moves based off of what we'll talk about. I don't think that we will see a big move, but maximizing John Metchie and Xavier Hutchinson. We've talked about it till we've been blue in the face, but how can the Houston Texans get much more from them? Will Anderson Jr.'s health any concern? We talk about an update there and how the Houston Texans can fare without their stud sophomore edge rusher and getting the best out of the offensive line. How does that look like? What does that look like? And if Houston can be a little bit more successful in that area. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Sarge, I want to start this show off by saying, as bad as Bobby Slowick has been as an offensive play caller, there were times against the New York Jets where John Metchie got open.
Yep.
For Xavier Hutchinson, maybe not as much, but Metchie was open and maximizing Metch, right? We talked about it all year, and I know a lot of fans are kind of past it, but my eyes don't fool me. I think the opportunities fools the eyes of those that are watching the TV. The opportunities are not necessarily coming for John Metchie, and I also think that when they do come, you are seeing C.J. Stroud not being the best version of himself. And so how can Houston get the best version out of John Metchie? I think early down opportunities to limit the pressure on the offense, to hit the big play if it's third and long. Right now, Houston has two guys that you absolutely know C.J. Stroud trusts on the money down situations or second and long passing downs. That's Nico and Tank. And honestly, Sarge, to your credit, you know how you always mention Robert Woods. We got to throw him in that mix as well. Those are C.J. Stroud's trustworthy options. And for Houston, Metchie's getting those opportunities in terms of being on the field and getting open. Houston has right now the third highest time to throw measurement. However, the second lowest clean pocket rate, the fourth highest route win rate. So we're seeing CJ extend plays, right? And when he typically extend those plays, who's he looking for? His trustworthy guys. Nico down the field, Tank Dell, Robert Woods. John Metchie was a part of that mix in their last game, but not necessarily as consistently as we'd like to see. Metch has been the odd man out. But I think in this case, if the Jets game is an indication of how Houston would be able to use him throughout the year with no Stephon Diggs, and if Houston doesn't look to bring in another wide receiver by the time the trade deadline, closes, we got to look at, him having his moment sooner or later. Lined up 16 times in the slot, 17 out wide. Again, I thought Bobby called some plays when Metch was open, and the offensive line didn't give CJ nearly enough time to find him. I look at the 2nd and 12 on the touchdown scoring drive. Metchie was open for a big play, no time. And then listen, Metchie was doing some good things out on the field, opening up opportunities underneath for guys like Tank Dell. Look at like the 31-yard catch and run on 3rd and 4, thanks to a pick play on a cross route. So I think Metchie's time is coming. Honestly, the patience have to be there. But if Houston doesn't look to upgrade, then he's going to be a part of the mix. He has to be a part of the mix in order to give this opportunity, this offense, the best opportunity to succeed.
John, I don't want to keep harping on on Bobby Slowick and his misfortunes this season. I don't want to keep, for lack of a better term, and I don't mean this literally. I'm really talking about figuratively. I don't mean to keep beating a dead horse. I hate that we have to keep mentioning Bobby Slowick, but at the root of a lot of these things, it's Bobby Slowick. And I'm going to tell you, when we're talking about John Metchie right now, John, I'm going to take you back to, so you remember that the Houston Texans played in the Hall of Fame game, and instead of traveling back home, they practiced 3 days in Ohio because they had a Friday game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, Friday preseason game against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Right.
When they were practicing at Nick Casario's old high school, I noticed a couple of things. One, I think that I reported on it and I said, this is the first time I've ever seen John Metchie show emotions. And what I mean by emotion, I think he let his emotions get the best of him. I never seen John Metchie hold his head down ever in anything, nothing. Like even when he was battling through cancer, he kept his head up. He kept fighting, going through chemotherapy, kept his head up, kept fighting. There was one day, and I think it was had to be that Wednesday maybe, but it was one day, that middle day, where everybody just had a bad day in practice, but they kept putting him in the with the second unit with Davis Mills. He was getting open and Davis Mills couldn't get him the ball. He was getting open, Davis Mills looked him off. And he finally got frustrated, and you could see it in his face because he was not getting the ball. And so what they did was, the next practice, they put him in with CJ. And when they put him in with CJ, passes here, passes there, passes here, passes there. And they just had that instant connection. And so from training camp, Bobby knew, hey, man, maybe if I can get Metchie on the field and run a play or two for him. If he's coming in to relieve, somebody on one of the wide receivers, let me run a play for him. And he should have been ready for this opportunity. Also, you can never, ever, in the NFL, you can never, ever not have contingency plans. And so you seen how he works with CJ. Hey, get him more reps at the first team reps. Of course, you're trying to get him and Diggs and Stroud on the same page, but he's on the same page with Nico. He's on the same page with Tank. Let him get on the same page with Metch. Let him get on the same page with Hutch, because you never know what could happen. Because guess what? Never know what could happen has happened. Nico's out for 4 weeks, right?
Right.
Stephon Diggs is out for the season. So I say all that to say this, is that Bobby should have seen in training camp what he had in John Metchie. And there's a lot of people reporting names like, oh, John Metchie's going to get cut. He's not doing this, that, and other. You're not watching John Metchie. John Metchie is one of the best route runners on this team. He is one of the best. And I'm talking about, if you put him in Tank and you make them run routes, they look like they're the same. They look like twins. You could black out the figures and watch them, and you don't know who's Tank and who's Metch. And so there's opportunity. There should have been more opportunities for him from the jump. But John, just like to your point, what John Metchie can do inside of this offense is move the chains.
Right.
You need to sustain drives. When I talked to when I asked head coach DeMeco Ryans on Monday about why aren't you all producing offensively in the second half, he's like, we're moving the ball, but once we get past the 50, and once we get into the red zone, things just stall out. Third downs just stall out. You got a third down wide receiver in John Metchie.
And I also think to that point, it seems like, I have a problem with this. We're seeing Houston, by the time the ball snap, is 2 seconds left on the play clock, and that's routine. But I think for Metchie, because those opportunities haven't necessarily been there for him, the solution now is find a solution. The conversation is now find the solution for him. And DeMeco talked about, he said, listen, when guys get those one-on-one opportunities and plays, are they making the play? I think in the case of Metchie, we're not seeing him make the play because the ball is not going to his area.
Yep.
And I just said, listen, Houston, were they the second lowest clean pocket rate, fourth highest route win rate in the NFL. So you're looking at those guys getting open, but oh my gosh, there's pressure in my quarterback face. Back to the Jets game, 8 sacks, right? And what Metchie's been doing, again, we look at that play, one play that stood out to me was a potential touchdown to Tank Dell. CJ was sacked. Another pick play from Metchie on that route, and Tank is getting open. So he's doing things for other guys. I think the offense needs to find a way to do things for him to get those opportunities. Then again, CJ has to be better. Missed him on 3 throws.
Yeah.
2 we saw, 1 he was wide open, didn't get a look. So he's missing them. He has to be better, no doubt about it. But a play that stood out to me, the first down play action, bad pass to Tank Dell on the first drive coming out of the halftime. Things like that. When you know Tank is going to be on the field majority of the time, a player like Metchie, can that ball go to him? The same for Xavier Hutchinson. We want to talk about how he can get more involved. Same for him. Those guys are in a position right now where they have been the odd man out all year. But this offense can't sustain it no more. They got to find a way to let them in the house so they can get comfortable with this offense and so they can make the big play. I just think for John Metchie, that moment is coming. And when it does, we should be able to look back and say, okay, this is why. We've talked about it. And now it's clicking on all cylinders, Sarge. And we got to talk about Will Anderson's health, right?
Yep.
They concerned.
Amen.
They concerned out there in the Texans world. So, Big Sarge, when we come back, we'll talk about that health and if he can go, how great that'll be for the Houston Texans going up against an offense that the Detroit Lions have. And if not, what should we expect from that team defensively, from the Houston Texans defensively, when we talk more on the other side. Texan fans, right now is a perfect time to talk to you about making sure you got your tickets for this Sunday night's game. Texans, Detroit Lions is going down at the NRG Stadium. And I hope you're not waiting to the last minute. But if you are one of those last minuters, please check out Game Time, the app right now. You can find Texans tickets, concert tickets, not just sports, but they have everything you need. If it's an event, hosting something in the city of Houston, you can find tickets on that event on Game Time. Game Time also has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all of the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks is a curation of picks that makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater events near you. You also get the panoramic view from your seat option in the app before you buy, so you know exactly where you're sitting before you make it to the event, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's Game Time. Also, Texans fans, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets guaranteed, win or lose. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. Speaking of action, Texans fans, how about some props for this week's matchup? Right now, FanDuel has the Texans as underdogs, but with C.J. Stroud's recent form, it may be a great time to grab some value on the Texans' money line or spread. Stroud is also listed at an over-under 1.5 TD, passing TDs, and he's been delivering some clutch performances. So it may be a great time to hop in on that because I'm sure he's looking to redeem himself from the game against the New York Jets. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get into the game today. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. If this is your first time watching the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube, please subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans page. And make sure you tell a friend to tell a friend. Big Sarge, Will Anderson missed a bulk of Thursday night's game against the New York Jets. He has been a pivotal player for the Houston Texans. I think a top 3 player for this team this season, lead the team in sacks, a top 5 sack getter in the NFL. We know about the pressures he's creating. He's also creating meals for the hunger across the USA with the Campbell's Chunky Soup. They're going to need him back against the Detroit Lions. Have you heard anything about the health of Will Anderson right now? And should the Houston Texans and fans out there be preparing themselves to go against the Detroit Lions at home without Will?
Well, according to my sources, Will is day to day, but by the time Sunday comes, he should be, ready to go. And if this would have been the game against the Jets, if that would have been a, very important game, like at the end of the season or even a playoff game, then Will would have been back in the game. But what they wanted to do was take precaution, because after Will came out, with the way that Will came off the field, with the way that Will came off the field Thursday night, I honestly didn't think that he was going to come back on the field. But he stayed in that blue tent, for the blue medical tent, for a very long time. And so once he finally did come out, he came out sprinting. And I think that over time, him going back into the game, him going back into the game, him playing the way that he did, I think that D'Amico said, hey, let's just do what's best for the team right now. We got to rest you. We got to rest you, because we're going to need you for later on in the season as well. And so
and they already playing on MetLife, so
right. And I mean, that's one of the fields. Side note, John, I've never seen so many injuries on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
Last season, it was just on the Texan side. This year, I mean, on both sides of the ball. So the Texans lost the Texans had 2 or 3 players hurt. The Jets lost like 5 players, like 5 starters. And so that field is horrible. They're going to have to do something about that. But Will Anderson could have played, and it's like, John, I'm going to be honest with you, they saved him from himself, because Will is a fierce competitor. He does not like to come off the field. He does not like to come off the field, even when he's tired. He doesn't want to come off the field. He wants to play. And so according to my sources, some people that I talked with today, he's should be good to go by Sunday. They're just watching and monitoring it. And, anytime you're dealing with those ankle sprains, I seen him in the locker room on Monday. He wasn't, limping or anything. He was walking regularly. And so he was on his way to go get more treatment, though. So we shall see. But like I said, I think that he should be good to go about game time.
In 2 games that Danico Autry has been back, he's played in 66 pass rushing snaps. So, I think what I just want to say, if Will isn't able to go, and I think he will, honestly, to your point, they had to make an executive decision. But if Will isn't able to go, I like the fact that Houston has Danico Autry.
Yes.
And I think he came back at the most perfect time. Mario Edwards goes out, so now he's back. And, of course, the expectations of the man that's making nearly $25 million over the next 2 seasons in Danielle Hunter, they rise if he can't go. So I don't think Houston is necessarily in a bad position. What I do like about this front four, and we have to talk about how this front four can help out this team, against the Detroit Lions. I like how they play discipline, and with a quarterback like Jared Goff, he's not a mobile quarterback. So if your edges are taken away and the 2 guys in the middle do what they have continued to do all year, especially Tim Sutter, right? I mean, Tim Sutter has been phenomenal for the Texans.
Yes.
But if those guys take away any of those lanes and opportunities for a quarterback to step up in the pocket to either deliver a clean throw or maybe take off with it, which, Jared Goff doesn't do a lot, then I think that they will have a good game against the Detroit Lions. Great offensive line in Detroit.
Yeah.
But we've seen Houston kind of have their way against some good offensive lines this year because of the personnel, and they're going to get healthy. You want Will Anderson out there because if he's out there, you're looking at Danico, Will, and Hunter, and Will just kind of playing all together. That's going to force pressure on that front 5 for the Detroit Lions. But I don't think it's as big of a concern as maybe not having Nico Collins this game.
For sure. And John, I'm going to say this too. We're talking about the health concern of Will Anderson, but getting Azeez back, I think that they will have Azeez Al-Shaair, linebacker, back this week. He's been ramping himself up to get back, and I think that his knee has been doing a lot better. And so getting him back, John, will, on top of having, like you said, having, Danielle Hunter on one side, Will Anderson Jr. on the other, and even when they have Tim Settle and Danico Autry in the game all at the same time, and even with Foley Fatukasi, having that defensive line is really good. But John, if you can get back Azeez Al-Shaair and Henry To'oTo'o is back, and then you're rotating them now that you know what Neville Hewitt can do, you can also insert him into the game at times, and you have Devin White, because what Jared Goff thrives on is that, that 0 to 9 yard range. Like he
Yeah.
loves
Yeah.
that
Talk about
underneath
it.
stuff. He's not one of those people who wants to throw the ball downfield. He will, but he knows that, the defense isn't going to give him a lot of downfield throws. He's not going to get a lot of explosive plays. And if he does, it's the yards after catch for his wide receivers. And Amon say, what is it? Amon St.
Amon-Ra
Brown.
St. Brown.
Amon-Ra St. Brown. And of course, I think they're going to get Jameson Williams back. And even hitting Jahmyr Gibbs out of the backfield. But with that defensive front four, that defensive line, and you can get those linebackers back, and even with, I think this will be a bounce back game for Jalen Petrie as far as playing in the slot, and he's also like a third linebacker. If you can just contain Jared Goff in that space and getting Will back, of course, but getting Aziz back, I think that's going to give the Houston Texans an opportunity for that defense to not only make some plays, but maybe, some 3 and outs, or maybe, get the Lions offense off the field. But as important as it is to get Will Anderson Jr. back, it's very important to also get linebacker Aziz Al-Shaair back.
Sarge, I'm so glad you said that. When I look at Jared Goff this year, according to the numbers, from 0 to 9 yards, an 85 completion percentage, 7 TDs, 1 interception. Now, from 10 to 19, that completion percentage drops nearly 30 to 58.5. 3 TDs, 3 interceptions. Over 20 yards, 47 completion percentage. He also has 4 turnover-worthy plays between 10 and 19. So the further the downs and the yards go, the harder Jared Goff, the easier it'll make on a defense, because he's going to make all of those throws a little bit harder. He's not going to be as successful as it is short.
And I was just going to interject real quick, John. That's why he's throwing at a league high 74.9% completion percentage. Is because you'll look up, John, and he's 10 for 10. And then you turn around, he's 15 for 15. But that's because he's hitting all these passes in the flats across the middle, taking advantage of their strong running game that they have. And when you have these defenses trying to stop the running game, he's just throwing right behind the linebackers, or throwing right into the flats.
We're seeing Detroit in a lot of 2nd and 4s.
Yes.
A lot of 2nd and 5, a lot of 2nd and 3s because of Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And so that front four for Houston, they got to contain those guys. But getting Aziz back, one thing that we talked about, and we've seen the growth from Henry T. So they've paired well together, just taking away everything, right? Between the 7 to 11 yard range, those crossing routes and everything that can happen quick, those guys have been on it very fast. Now, getting out of here, getting the best out of the offensive line, Sarge. We talked about it. I don't think we can necessarily get blue in the face. I get real red, but we've talked about it, my man, and now it comes down to Houston made a couple of moves, but how does that really look like moving forward? So we got more of that Texans talk when we come back. First, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers, today's show was sponsored by BetterHelp. This month is all about gratitude. It's Thanksgiving, of course, and along with the person that I want to shout out, my mom. Shout out to my mama, shout out to my wife, and shout out to my baby girl. Shout out to Big Sarge, and shout out to his hat. There's also other people that we need to continue to thank, because we don't thank enough, and that's ourselves. Sarge, we do a lot, right? Texans, Rockets, Texans, work, balance in life can get a little bit difficult. And sometimes it's hard to remind ourselves that we are trying to make the best out of everything. And in this crazy world, that isn't easy. So here's a reminder to take some time to thank the people in your life, including yourself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suitable to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Let gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get started with 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. The Houston Texans brought in a couple of vets. Sarge, they signed guard Tremaine Akram Jr. to the practice squad, won a Super Bowl with the Rams. They also signed left guard Jerome Carvin to the practice squad. Previously played with the Bears, and has played at left guard, right guard, and some center as well. Has allowed only 3 sacks in 5 seasons. So the Houston Texans are making a move to booster up the support in that room. No Kenyon Green for the rest of the year. Hopefully, Houston gets Jerry Patterson back this week. They're going to need him. Do they look to shuffle around the personnel? And I'm only asking you this. Does Titus Howard look to move back to right guard? Does Houston elevate Blake Fisher? Do they move in Jared Patterson to play some center? Does Juice, move down to left guard? How can Houston maximize the players on this roster in that room to get the best? They can't allow another 8-sack game.
They cannot. You're right. They cannot. They cannot allow 8 sacks. I mean, 3 at the most. But I think you also have a defensive line defense that doesn't do a lot of blitzing as well. Shout out to Aaron Glenn, right? Aaron Glenn.
Shout out to Aaron Glenn,
defense coordinator for the Detroit Lions.
Oh, boy, didn't my boy go to Nimitz?
He did.
What's
he
the
surely
Nimitz?
did. Yeah. So, but he doesn't do. I don't think he does a lot of blitzing. But we've also seen that this line can get beat. You don't need to really have a lot of blitzes. They just do stunts and delayed blitz. And so we've talked about this over and over and over again. And they're going to be without Kenyon Green this week. So it's more than likely that Kendrick Green will be starting. John, in order for them to get better, in order for them to to be successful against that Detroit Lions defense, you just got to call quicker plays. You got to pick up the tempo, call quicker plays, trust CJ. That's the one thing that I want to get through Bobby's head if I could. Hey, man, trust him. Here's a guy that texts you all the time, all times of the night, because he's up studying. They say CJ get on their nerves because he be doing so much film study. They had to tell him, hey, man, go to bed. But here he knows how to play the game, John. Trust him more. Take some of the restraints off of him. You've seen what he can do in 26 games? He's played 26. No, he's played 28 games in his career. It's time, man. Just let him control the flow of the game. Let him do what he needs to do. I'm not saying Bobby, you can't call plays, but what I'm saying is you and CJ get on the same page. And if it doesn't work, then okay, we're going to take all of the good and leave some of the bad. See how we can improve on the bad. The only way you're going to be able to help that offensive line, who by this point, can they get better? Yes, they can. But they also need some type of help. We see how good they could be in the run game. In the pass game, this is where, John, it comes back to John Metchie. Yeah. This is where, John, in the business, we call this a callback. This is where
I don't think they've been really good in the run game. This is just me speaking. I think that they've just benefited from Joe Mixon being Joe Mixon.
Well, that means that's good in the run game.
Well, that's good because of the running back that's back there. This is just me talking, especially going back to watch that New York Jets game.
All right, let's go ahead and talk about it.
There's one play where both guards are beat, right and left, and Joe Mixon just, cuts out, and he's able to make something big out of nothing that was going to be a nothing big, tackle for loss. So,
but John, this is a zone blocking offense. That, remember I said this before. Joe Mixon says, I run like I'm running in the dark looking for the light. So even if they do get,
he's good at his job. I don't think it's necessarily been a lineman for me.
But I mean, some of these cutback lanes he's had, that's been because of the zone blocking scheme and something opens up on the backside. Remember one of our biggest gripes last year before Damian Pierce was replaced by Devin Singletary, who also knows how to run in a zone blocking scheme. Right. Damian Pearson knew what? Just go with the flow. He never looked backside. Joe Mixon is one of the ones, he knows this offense where I'm going to get to flowing, but I know something is happening on the backside. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that every play is, block great. I mean, across the NFL, that's not. I mean, I watched I watched a couple of weeks ago when the Cleveland Browns just totally took out Derrick Henry from the Baltimore Ravens, and he's an MVP candidate. So it doesn't happen like that all the time, John, but you got to take some. Look, let me put on my head coach D'Amico Ryan's voice. Hey, John, you got to talk about the positives when it comes to the offensive line too.
Well, I think the positives for that group, hey, it ain't a lot, but I do think it needs to be some personnel changes, right? And of course, the number one is due to injury, and I think he's just flat out better at this point. We won't see King Green out there. We should see Kendrick Green out there to start the game.
How much better though, John? How much better do you think Kendrick Green is?
A tad bit better. And you know what he does? He gives effort. So when he's blocked and when he's beat on the block, I'd at least see Kendrick try to fight back to it instead of just, I got beat. And again, I think that's
one hand half does than another. I'm sorry.
I think that's the attitude that's been passed down from the leader of that group, and from Larry Tunsil. That's just me personally. And I also think that Houston has to give Jared Patterson a look to maybe give a release to Juice. Those guys have routinely gotten beat out there. Excuse me for my language today. But maybe Patterson gives you more of a boost on that field out there,
If he's out of concussion protocol.
If he's out of concussion protocol. Maybe you see what bringing in rookie Blake Fisher at right guard looks like.
Guard?
We've seen
what about Broker? What about Nick Broker at right guard?
I think Fisher's a more talented player than Broker. But I guess what I'm getting at is, for Houston, I think it's a personnel change. From the coaching staff, I don't think that they're going to fire anybody mid-season. I don't think that they've hit panic mode yet. They have a winning record right now. Now, if it happens, boy, I would be very shocked. You'd be shocked too. This is not a team.
Who will be shocked? The fans? Me.
This is not a team that has traditionally fired guys when they're winning in the middle of the season.
Right? I'm glad you put that caveat of winning because they did fire Bill O'Brien.
Right, but they were losing bad. But 6-3, still a hold of the AFC South. They're gonna make the playoffs. I don't see no team in this division making a run at beating them, in the division. But I think personnel changes are needed, man. And I also think I look at Blake Fisher and I think maybe he gives this team a little bit more nastiness. Not a tackle, and I don't think he's a tackle in the NFL. I didn't think he was a tackle coming out. I thought he was a good contingency playing for Titus Howard. But when I look at his game, he looks like an athletic guard that you can do some things with. So maybe they look and try to give him some looks at practice this week. I don't know, but a personnel change is needed. And I think an attitude change is also needed with their personnel change. And that's where I do look at maybe a Nick Broker. Maybe some of those feistier, scrappier guys that just want a shot to prove themselves, which is what I saw out of Kendrick Green, which is why I'm giving him that nod over Kenyon Green. Kenyon Green just a little bit soft right now.
He is. He lost too much weight, John. He lost over 30 pounds. He lost over 30 pounds. And I'm going to tell you this real quick. According to a source, he knows it. He knows that he's lost too much. He got to get back to his Texas A&M playing weight.
A little bit more weight on him. And again, I think this is an attitude adopted from the leader of that group. So I'm very curious to see how the Houston Texans address this offensive line next offseason. We got more Texans talk throughout the week. I'm your boy, John, some sports guy Hickman. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Make sure you follow the Locked On Texans page at Locked On Texans. And please subscribe, like, and comment to the page on YouTube. Big Sarge?
Oh, my bad. I didn't know. I thought my bad.
Sarge!
Yeah, for sure. Make sure you follow me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Big Sarge Sports with the Z at the end.
Until next time, ladies and gentlemen. Trade deadline. Will Houston make a move? Will they stay put? Sarge, we'll talk about that tomorrow. Peace.